Welcome everyone to our session on big data. So big data, similar to content, is become sort of a buzzword in our industry. However, all of the firms here today have managed to leverage big data for some kind of competitive analysis. So I'd like kind of the takeaway for today's panel to be some kind of lesson learned that some of the audience members can incorporate into their lives. I should caveat this with, we actually have another panelist joining, and he should be here in about 10 minutes. So yeah, so we'll just have him join when he gets here. So I guess a good place for us to start would be, I'd like each panelist to spend a few minutes talking about how they've managed to productize collecting and analyzing data within their own firms as part of their introduction. So we can start here with Salvador.
Okay, thank you very much for inviting me for this forum. It's a very interesting forum till now. What we have done in the Lift Group it's a holding of companies in Portugal that have about 8 companies doing mostly PR, but also other kinds of marketing services to clients. One of the companies that we bought 3 years ago, and we are also buying companies, was a company called WOM, Word of Mouth Marketing, and this is a company that has a platform of now 130,000 ambassadors, brand ambassadors. It's a very specific company. It's a very interesting company because what these ambassadors do is they try products and they report their experience, both offline and online environments, and it's a huge. It's a very powerful research tool too, because we found it out in the progress of the business that we can do lots of research, in-depth research, with this platform and with these 100,000 influencers that are in the platform, and we can do it in 4 kinds of ways related to PR. One of the ways is a reputation-driven way to do research, because you always have the differences between the perception of the stakeholders and the reality of the companies, and you have to close that gap. But you have to understand first what are the perceptions of the stakeholders. And one of the things that we have in the platform is stakeholders panels that allows us to know what they think about the companies in several dimensions, like products and services, innovation, workplace environment, leadership, financial performance, and really it's a great way to do research and to have big data on this platform. Another way is to kill several myths that companies have on their products. I can give you an example. If I ask the audience to tell me which has more calories, 100 milliliters of low-fat milk or a beer, which one would you tell? Beer. The beer has more calories. Yeah, well, that's a myth. It's a wrong answer. Exactly. Actually, the low-fat milk has more calories than milk. So with this platform, we can also do this kind of work with people in an evidence-based approach to the reality. So this is very, very interesting, and also measuring the impact of campaigns on the audience. So we can extract the real impact of PR campaigns on the platform. So it's a very cheap way to do things.
Indeed, and we'll dive into measurement a little bit more as part of the discussion. I just want to turn over to Bob. Do you want to quickly explain kind of what you were doing at W2O?
Sure. So I already feel smarter. I know I can drink more beer, which is great.
I know, it's great news today. Biggest takeaway from the panel.
Okay.
Normally you don't drink 1 liter of beer, of milk, low-fat milk.
Well, we'll check up on the cocktail hour. You can educate me. But also, I just do a shout out for the PROI network. I realize we should shout out to our team as we're up here. So just wanted to mention that as well. What we do is what we call pragmatic disruption of the status quo. So we actually study the models that we've all grown up with, whether they're media relations or issues management or you name it. And what we do is we go deep on the model, and before you know it, you can see the pain points and the unmet needs in the market. When we do that, we then use what we call the rule of three, and we'll go to at least 3 clients where we'll be talking about the pain points, and if we can solve the problem for them on a board, usually a whiteboard, and they say, that's what I want, then we'll go back and build it. And we build algorithms and custom software to create unique advantage in the market for our clients. So just give you one example, and then I'll stop, because we'll have plenty of time for, hopefully, for Q&A. One of the first models we built was on influencers, and so we've all built media lists our entire lives. But actually, the algorithm that we built looks across all publicly available info, all 10 channels of online, and we've done it now close to 500 times, and there's never more than 50 people who drive the majority of share of conversation for a brand of any size anywhere in the world. And if you know who they are in order, it makes a big difference in what you do. And then you can actually do an algorithm that's right a layer from that, so you can see who the top 4 people who influence each influencer. So that completely changes how you tell stories, who you tell them to, how you shape your brand. So that's just one example, and we'll get into more.
Tom?
Great. I'm Tom Lindell. I'm the managing director of a PR agency in Minneapolis called Exponent. It's a 9-year-old agency that actually has its roots with an advertising agency. It was born with an agency called Cull McFoy. And that agency was created, Exponent was created with the express intent to be a digitally driven agency. We call it a modern PR agency because of that. And what we did a couple of years ago, because of our roots in digital, analytics has been a part of what we've done since our start 9 years ago. But what we did a couple of years ago was recognize that analytics that we can get from a campaign to measure impact, measure behavior, is something that we can also use at the front end. So if we use that as a front-end opportunity finder instead of as a back-end measurement tool, we're going to be more creative, we're going to be more relevant, we'll understand influencers in an entirely different way, we'll understand media relations in a way that's much more different as well. We're going to find story angles that are much more compelling because we're going to know the audiences and what they're talking about now and be able to insert a brand into those conversations. It also completely changes how we're doing social engagement. The panel last talked about that idea of content, and if you have content that's relevant, which of course is a key thing that public relations does, we need to know what is relevant, what are people talking about, what do they care most about. So taking that analytics on the front end, we branded it as a process and called it the Foundry. That literally is the piece to find opportunities in a new way.
Welcome, Fraser. I'm glad that you were able to join us. So we're basically just quickly doing introductions and talking about how every firm has been able to productize data within their own organizations.
Okay. I'm from an organization called Rubicon, and we set up 12, 13 years ago. And really, our objective was to inject more thorough analysis, research behind everything we do. And really that was based on my experience as a client dealing with ad agencies where, frankly, at that time they were much more sophisticated than PR was. And I think big data, going back to the subject of the session, big data I think is a glorious opportunity and a gigantic banana skin at the same time. In that I think we are not very strong as an industry in investing in the analytical skills required to actually process data. I think algorithms are fantastic. They take us to the right places. Primary research will not be replaced by that. We're not very good at investing in primary research, not very good at getting our clients to invest in it. And I think that's where we need to focus our efforts. I think big data is not the silver bullet that some would like it to be. It certainly helps. It certainly helps us to get to greater clarity more quickly and probably more cost effectively, but actually it's a tidal wave of data. Mm-hmm. And if we can't analyze it and we can't make sense of it, then our insight is not going to be very good. And that's what clients in the end will buy.
So that's actually a good jumping off point for where I'd like to start, and that's culture. I mean, PR has traditionally been an intuitive, instinctive kind of profession. So I'm curious as to how you all were able to sort of transform that mindset within your organization so that you're, at all levels, you're staff and in turn your clients were able to sort of embrace data. Do you want to start, Tom?
Sure. I think it starts with an expectation. I think there was a panel a time or two ago that talked a little bit about, do you have a social media department? Do you have a media relations department? We don't have those either, in part because we expect every single person in our organization to be fundamentally, fully capable of understanding and knowing what's happening in the social realm. So if you start there, I think that changes a little bit of the expectation from the beginning. We're not retraining or putting people in a box, and certainly there are, that spectrum of social is incredibly wide, and there are specialty areas in there that have a different kind of piece, whether that's content, whether that's community management and things like that, where that's creativity. All of those are there, but if you have that fundamental native understanding, the kind of transformation isn't quite so great.
So do you primarily define data within your organizations through the social lens?
Yes and no. I would say the easiest point to find real-time data is absolutely through the social conversation. Tracking it in real time is incredibly valuable. But there's a lot of sources for information that we can have, whether that's the analytics that we get from behavior changes, from purchasing intent, all of those kind of things too, that isn't all conversational. Social is the place that it literally can happen. Everyone can have access to it. It can be in real time and it can be now, where the other things may not be as readily accessible.
I had a client once say that they fired their PR agency because their agency never asked them for their Google Analytics password for web metrics. They were only interested in the conversational data, and he actually fired them for that reason. So I was curious, if you all look at web metrics, it sounds like you
absolutely.
do. Bob, did you want to address?
I would just add to it. I mean, the standard that we put in is that if we're doing something in analytics, does it make our counselors smarter? And if it does, and it helps clients more, then we're in. If it's just gathering a lot of junk, then we're out. A lot of stuff is noise. I'll give you one quick example of this. I was just looking at it before. Back there is we built something called M-Digital Life. So we do a lot of work at health. So we actually indexed, in the case of the US, 3.5 million medical providers. And then we built some software to verify who they are. And then we actually can track physicians. So in this case, if you say, like, what are cardiologists saying in Dallas right now, we can tell you that. We can tell you who influences them, what time of day they're online, what words they use, the whole thing. So then your ability to consult goes up another level because you now know exactly what they want. There's no guessing. So I think the communications teams actually have the best gut feels. They're the best storytellers. We're the ones who are like primed to take advantage of data, quite frankly, more than marketing is, because marketing is usually more passive. They're sitting back, absorbing all the research, trying to figure out what other people do. We're the craftsmen who have been doing all this stuff all the time. So I think that when you put the two together, it's very powerful.
Culturally at W2O, how have you gotten folks at all levels to embrace data?
It's walking the talk. So I think if someone sees the value, then they're in. If someone hears a lot of chatter that this is important, they're not in. So it's a multi-year effort. I mean, we're about 5 years into doing this, and we're making, I think, great progress, but you're always convincing the next person.
Fraser, did you want to address the culture?
Yeah, I was just going to say that there's two ways that we're addressing it. One is a physical space, a space that we call the hub, which allows you to do what you were talking about, look at the world in real time, campaign in real time, adjust how you campaign accordingly. And I think the great thing about social media is you can see where it's catching fire, and you can actually channel resources into that space. You need to be very organized to do that. I think that is a great advantage that PR has, that we're very used to campaigning and very used to being flexible and building content and changing course in midstream. The other elements in the marketing mix are not very good at that. So if we stay campaigning, and we will be able to respond very quickly and aggressively around what we're seeing catching fire in social media. So that's one area where we're culturally creating an intervention for our clients and for our people in the way that they plan, because actually they also use the space for planning and drawing in data and stimulus. The other thing is just straightforward training. we are investing very heavily in training. We're investing behind that very heavily in knowledge platforms to move our knowledge around inside the business and make ourselves more effective managers of knowledge. That's all we have in the end, is the knowledge that we own in people's heads.
So I'm curious how many of you all are using, or how much of your sort of the work that's related to data is on the planning stages. Because oftentimes I hear from agencies, especially independents, that they have a hard time getting clients to pay for data planning. They either expect it to be embedded in the retainer, or it's just not something that they perceive has enough value. And then, so basically data within the organizations ends up being for measurement after action reports. So are you all actually getting clients to pay for data for strategic planning?
We are. We expected right at the beginning. I will tell you that certainly there are clients that are like, ooh, that's a lot of money for just planning. I want to pay you to execute or for engagement or things like that. So it does depend on the client and how you where you incorporate the cost into that. That can be a part of the engagement budget, frankly, instead of part of the planning budget, depending on who the client is, but they all have to pay.
Yeah, well, in my case, what we're doing, it's we have our own research tool. It's a scientific research tool, and it's much cheaper than the usual research tool that most of us used for many years. So clients now are willing to pay, not as much as they thought they would pay, but pay a little bit less and have some scientific approach to PR, and not only the intuitive approach that we are used to. And I think things are changing a lot in the PR business. We are not just influencing the media, we are also trying to influence the influencers, and each one of us are an influencer of a certain group of friends. And this is very important, because I think we are shifting to a company led, a marketing led by the company, to a new paradigm that is the marketing led by consumer. So you have to influence large groups of consumers that are influencing even larger groups of friends. So I think we have to do this kind of work, and this is very important.
So is your tool, is it a proprietary tool that you built internally?
Yes, we bought a company 3 years ago, and what we did, it's developed this tool to be international tool, multi-language tool, multi-country tool, multi-alphabet, because we are now in the crisis countries in Europe. We built in the Portuguese, that, as you know, is a crisis country, and we have a pilot in Greece with another alphabet and another language in another country. So it's a very interesting thing to do.
So that's interesting, because both yourself and Bob's firm, you all both build tools from the ground up, from scratch. Whereas I'm seeing a trend towards a lot of agencies just white labeling tools simply because they found that it was too expensive to invest, maintain, service a lot of these the tools that they were building. 5 years ago, we had Tweet Level from Edelman, we had Twens from Wagged, and those have sort of fizzled out. So I'm curious as to how, I mean, are you able to justify spend in terms of building your own tools? And does anyone on the panel white label? And how does that work?
This is not a research tool. This is a word of mouth platform that I use in the PR business as a research tool. So this is only a business that goes for itself as a word of mouth marketing company. But in Lift Consulting, we used it as a research tool. Okay.
Okay. Bob, did you want to address this?
Sure. I think it is hard to do. I mean, I think we have about 85 folks in analytics and about 15, 20 folks in software, and then another 100 in digital. And getting them to all work together and innovate is quite interesting. What it requires is that for us at least, is that we're hiring a lot of people who are not traditional communications people. We have physics professors, we have statisticians, we have folks that are amazingly smart. They almost scare me sometimes when I talk to them. But we then combine them with folks who actually know communications and marketing principles, and it takes time. So it's a multi-year effort. We have to say, we're going to figure this out. I think where it gets really interesting is that what human beings do, which is wonderful, is that they all follow patterns. So because we're good at communications, all of us, you can actually start to see what those patterns are very clearly. And when you combine the analytics to it, you start to see the breakthroughs in how you can do communications more effectively. So that then feeds the interest in doing more. But I think you have to have the stomach to say, this is going to take a couple of years, and we're going to go deep. If you go shallow or just try to do it on the sides, I don't think it will work.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. Our agency has kind of done a mixture of both of those. We actually have created an analytics tool around Twitter, for example. But the truth is, a lot of the off-the-shelf things that we can use, frankly, keep us just as nimble, and then we don't have to be tied to any one thing. We can be a little bit flexible too. So things like Crimson Hexagon for social, and even Google Analytics, which are just are part of what our clients are already having, can be a big part of what we do.
So do you find that you all, so in the case where you're using off-the-shelf technology, does the client typically have the license, or do you all have the license? I mean, do they? So you do. Okay. Fraser, did you want to talk about?
I mean, we're in pretty much exactly the same position.
Okay.
I think, and the reason we're there is that we don't see ourselves as software developers. Mm-hmm. And actually, we want to be quite platform agnostic, mm-hmm. and to be able to move between platforms. That's not to say we're investing in software as well, mm-hmm. To blend them together, mm-hmm. Because none of them are perfect, none of them are good until the one you come up with, which I'm looking forward to seeing.
Well, I think this is one of the trends, at least that I'm seeing from our side, is we're actually becoming more often partners with public relations firms, not competitors.
Yeah. Particularly
when we're working on the same client. And I think that's a really important trend. It doesn't have to always be that we're going after each other. I think it's very cool when you can actually figure out how to complement. We each do what we're good at, and we move on. You know?
So another area where I'm seeing partnerships, some agencies are partnering with some of these marketing technology firms, in part because it's really expensive to invest in them. So I don't know if you all have ever done this, but it's called a new business license, right? So you get a certain amount of access for a pitch, with the expectation that if you win the account, you'll work together, and you'll do a full buy. Have any of you all experimented with any partnerships like that? No. I was in New York last week, and actually I heard a few agencies were talking about that, so apparently it was not happening yet. So let's talk about measurement for a few minutes, because I want to open it up to the audience. There was this perception for a long time that measurement was all vanity metrics, right, just to justify your spend. So our clients, I'm guessing they're much more sophisticated about that now, and are asking for much more rigorous sort of measurement metrics. So I'm curious as to how you've seen that evolve. What are the main KPIs that your clients are asking for now?
Well, as I mentioned, we are in Europe in a crisis environment, so the clients are not willing to pay that much for to know what was the return on their investment in PR, as they're not paying, not willing to pay also to know the return on advertising, on other channels on communication. I think here in the United States it's pretty much different, because you have huge budgets to do that, and they really do need to know what they're doing. Nevertheless, we have other tools to measure what's going on both online and offline, on media and in social media platforms, and we try to tell clients what they really reached with the campaigns, but they're not willing to pay that much for it, at least in Portugal, mm-hmm. and most of the European. So
they're not willing to pay
European countries
for really sophisticated measurement.
No.
Yeah.
At least in the Southern European countries.
But
like
do they
Portugal,
still?
Spain, Italy, Greece.
But do they still expect sophisticated measurement, even though they're not willing to pay a premium for it?
They don't expect.
They don't expect it.
They don't expect sophisticated measurement. But we have to give them. Yeah.
We might get a different answer from the rest of you. Tom, you're nodding.
Yeah, I think they expect more than ever. And part of that is, and goes back to the idea and the promise of the term big data, means there's access to more content and information, and I can learn more about what's effective than ever before. And so clients, I think, have ramped up that expectation, Without quite knowing what that means or what it's going to take to get there, they certainly are demanding more. There's just too much competition for the marketing dollar today to not know which is the one that's going to matter the most, which one's going to be most effective, which is going to start conversation, which is going to have inbound links back to their website, which they can track as well. Even regionally across the country, where are the conversations happening? All of that's mattering today.
Are you finding that you're having to spend too much time putting together these reports? Because, I mean, I spoke to a client recently, and they actually pulled all of their work in-house because they said that they felt like their agencies were spending too much time on these after-action reports, and they just thought that it was time that was, honestly, like, that could be spent better in-house.
I'll give you an example of the need for standardization. I mean, I agree with what you were saying, and it's, in the paid media space, which I know we don't normally inhabit, we're actually building a software platform now where you can take all of the basically advertising that's done for any agency that works with a company, bring it into this one software platform, and the client can see what's being done and how it's being measured. Well, why we're doing that is because the metrics in the industry are all over the place. Standardization of data is a joke. And actually the real power in the future for advertising is going to be what we do. So I'm a huge believer that earned media is going to drive paid. And so the sooner we can put those two together, the sooner this industry will really take off. And so that's one of the drivers for us to build that. But I'm amazed at the lack of metrics standardization, even at the best companies in the world.
And clients don't even know what they're expecting from
whatever they got last quarter. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I agree. I think it's a massive problem. There's a lot of legacy data in companies as well, which skews everything because they're used to measuring in a particular way for the last 30 years. I mean, just to take it up to corporate for a moment. One of the things that we are working very hard on at the moment is actually how you create the correlations between corporate narrative and brand narrative, how you actually create the frameworks around the way you manage reputation holistically in an integrated way across all operations at all levels. That is where reputation is created. It's created in millions and millions of actions every day that needs a framework, and companies typically don't have that framework. And the fuel for the framework is data and analytics. And that's where I think when companies get to that point where they are embedding frameworks to manage reputation in a more holistic, integrated way, reporting to the CEO, that's when you'll get alignment of metrics and evaluation techniques and analytics, because it'll have to be. And otherwise it won't talk and give the CEO a read across the organization. That's a big prize for this industry, to control the architecture and design of those frameworks and the business intelligence systems that go into it. That's a huge opportunity for PR firms that can innovate.
But in each client, you have two different clients. You have the CEO and the C-suite that are worried about the reputation of the company, and then you have the marketing side that's worried about the ROI of the campaign and if it drives sales or not drives sales. When you mix things, you have the intangible measures on reputation, and that should be, from my point of view, the analytics that we have to make, because I think there are huge gaps in perceptions between perception and the reality of the companies. So you have to close those gaps with really strategic work in the PR side, corporate PR side. But on the other hand, we are approaching the marketing side because the budgets are there, and you have to build campaigns that drive sales. So and those guys are not worried about the reputation of the company. They're worried about sales.
They should be.
They should be. So it's very difficult
what they don't
to measure
understand is the correlation between the
everything. And if you go to a country like Portugal, it's very expensive to have a reputation study on a client. So actually, you can spend more money on a study that is spending on a PR campaign. So this is the thing that we have there, and it's a very hard thing to work with.
I've had the argument. I just think it's an argument we have to win, because the focus is on downstream spending, and actually there are very direct correlations which we haven't yet found between reputation and sales, between reputation and operating costs around brands, and the effectiveness of all the spending in marketing. It just doesn't get counted properly. The correlations haven't been isolated, they haven't been identified. CEOs will absolutely be interested in that, and so will CMOs, because their dollars will go further or will be worth less, depending on how they look at it.
I think there's a tremendous opportunity to elevate the role that public relations practitioners can have, frankly, in the conversation. It does elevate their role at a much higher level than just a marketing person. When you're
I think, actually, that's an interesting point in terms of the various points of entry and whether data is changing that for the various organizations. But we have less than 10 minutes, so I actually want to open it up to the audience and see if anyone has any questions, and then we can always circle back if we need to. Any questions from the audience? I'm blinded. Oh, there we go.
Excuse me, Bob Fraus from Seattle, and also a PROI partner. You know, I think the discussion is excellent. I think, and I come from a more of a logic side of the equation, the left brain side, big data, you know, get all the research. But I've been in this business a long time, and the more research and the more data I give to the creative department, the crappier the product. So, tell me how to get over that hump with great data and drive good creative.
Go ahead.
I think you need different people to do different things. I think the last thing any client needs or any agency needs, I think, is a dominance from the data side. You know, actually data junkies driving stuff that isn't insightful or actually intuitive. And I think you can't replace intuition and decision making and leaps of faith with data. You don't get 100% clarity. You have experience and judgment that goes with data and gets blended with data to make better decisions. I think people lean. In some ways, that's why I hate the big data debate, because it's positioned as a sort of magic pill that we all
Right.
take.
I mean, the balance of creative. I mean,
Yeah.
so
I'm
bottom.
glad you said that,
so-
because I think sorry about that. I just think an analyst isn't a creative person, but I think an analyst can be if it's the right
Yeah,
analyst.
absolutely.
So
Is
Bob-
the reality.
So we've been actually combining creative and analytics now for quite some time, and actually you can do it. And I think it's a myth that you can't. It's when you think about it, I think of it like a bowl. If I was baking a cake, and in there I'm showing you exactly who the influencers are. I'm showing you exactly what content customers want that you're trying to reach. I'm showing you the exact keywords that drive the majority behavior, and I'm showing you the exact channels they hang out on by week, by day, by hour, right? So when you have all this knowledge in the right place, from a creative standpoint, you are really on fire in terms of being directional. And so the best creatives actually love that stuff, and they can really go to town. The other thing is primary research has been mentioned a couple of times. There's primary research and analytics together are very powerful. It's not an either-or scenario. And many of you know this, but I mean the way the brain works is that subconscious behavior is really what we're picking up in analytics. And that's really what people believe. Primary research, we're getting what people can remember, and that's usually 3 to 7 things per topic. They can't go deeper than that. So if we put those two together, and then we actually have the basket of fundamentals, it's a creative's best day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So data has not killed Don Draper.
It's empowering, Don.
Yeah. Yes.
The two of you mentioned building analytics platforms to sort of get at the heart of the big data so it becomes usable insight for driving your campaigns. Where do you start? You know, if you're an agency that doesn't have that capability but wants that capability, where do you start? Do you go out and get an analytics guy? Do you go out and get somebody who's, from one of the big number crunching, consultants? Where do you start to build, or do you go out and get a programmer to build the software platform for you?
Well, what we've done in Lyft, that we bought this small company that had this platform, and that we developed the platform further. And we got the analytic guy coming on board to help us to do research on the platform. And it was a fortune, lucky move, because I didn't know when I bought the platform that it was so powerful in research for PR. We are not an analytics firm, we are a traditional PR firm, and this is a cheap way to do research. It's not a research firm, but it's a cheap way to do research, and clients are happy with this. And it's very powerful, and it's getting more powerful when we build some new features in it. So we are now developing a social media score for each one of the 130,000 influencers that we have, like a cloud, but with more things on it. So we really do know who influences who in what subjects. And what we're doing now is we are internationalizing the platform and are franchising the platform for some countries and doing directly in other countries to do the word of mouth business, but also the research for PR.
I would say my answer to that would be you just start one person at a time. So like when I left Dell, and joined Jim Weiss, Jim and I both decided we're going to do this. And so at first it was just me, right? And so then but one person at a time. And what we were very careful to do is get a hybrid of great communicators with great analytics folks and make sure that they worked as one team. So we started to see as communicators morphing into great counselors with an analytics background. And that's, of course, now happening more and more now. But it's just one person at a time deciding what you're going to focus on. And it's a multi-year effort. I don't think it's like having one person. Like, I think what happens if the CEO and president, the C-suite, if they're not totally focused on it, it becomes a side project, and there's no way that's going to be successful. It's too intense.
Bob, you've said multi-year a few times. Do you think that's an advantage that independents have, that they can? Absolutely. They don't need to manage quarter by quarter, right?
I do. I mean, I think, I heard all that we don't want to sell the holding companies and everything, just smiling there. I think we all believe that in our core to some degree. But I think we have the luxury of not worrying about a quarter. We can actually do the right thing over time. We can play with our margin, provided we're reasonably healthy to do that. And I think that's what you have to do. This is not, it's not for the timid, right? I think it's like, I heard you talking on content before. I mean, you're already thinking that way. It's how do you get the whole company behind it, which you may have, and then just focus.
So we probably have time for one more question. Any others out there? I'm slightly blinded by the light. Oh, Arun.
Fraser, you talked about the tidal wave of data and how the PR industry isn't really good enough at understanding it and then deriving insights from it. How worried does it make all of you on stage when you see, for example, Publicis and Omnicom merging, and one of their stated goals is that they believe that size and that scale is going to make them better at understanding that tidal wave of data?
I can say this in this forum, but I like them getting bigger and bigger because, I think what you just said about our advantage is independence, our advantage is being able to take a long view, to be more strategic than them. And if we don't take that advantage and use it back on the networks, then we're crazy. We're a cash generative business that should be profitable enough to reinvest, and we should have a strategic view of how we're reinvesting our money. And if we don't have a clear view forward, we should get one. Being big is an advantage in some ways. It's a huge disadvantage in a world that's changing very fast. They can't move fast. They have huge legacy positions. They have lots of P&L separations, lots of internal competition. They'll spend the next 3 years trying to integrate the businesses or pretending to integrate them. And yeah, we'll eat their lunch quietly and they won't even notice because they're too big.
Yep. Bob, you wanted to?
I think for all of us, we have an inherent advantage. I mean, I really believe very strongly, as I mentioned before, that earned media will drive the peso model in the future. Earned will drive paid. It's the cousin of shared and owned. And that plays right to our strength. It does not play to the strength of the Publicis, Omnicoms of the world because their legacy models are dependent on the paid media world. So they are going to move way too slow. It's a huge opportunity. And I actually think the next 2 to 3 years will redefine our industry in many ways. So that's up to us. The other comment I have on Publicis Omnicom is just, I think that was a very expensive way for Maurice to retire.
Well, innovation at the end of the day is almost always coming from smaller, more nimble, more flexible people that are looking for opportunities versus trying to restore or keep growing what you've already built.
It's a good note to end things on. Well, thank you, everyone.